hello, and thank you so much for joining me for the podcast of The True Power from Within. I do pray each and every day that this podcast touches you in the most amazing and encouraging way. So, I've been talking a lot about vision, but God brought something to me that I feel like impacts a lot of us. And as I reflect back, I've been seeing in talking to others about this particular subject, and I feel like this particular thing holds us back from the vision that God has for us. I've labeled this podcast "You Cannot Heal If You Will Not Deal," and I fought God on this a little bit because I was like, I don't know if this is, but He said, "Be bold, be bold." And I'm going to tell you a story. So yesterday I was speaking to a very sweet little soul, and she was sharing some things with me, and it really brought me to a place, and I began to have a conversation with her about having to face what it is that she's trying to accomplish. There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain, but there's also a lot of love. And there's a vision to have a relationship. There is, a vision that she wants to heal and be whole from this particular situation. And as I was talking to her, I was telling her that, in order for you to fully heal, you're going to have to go into that situation head on. And I gave her some ideas of things to do, to really embrace and be able to heal. I have another family member of mine that's dealing with some mental illness. And I gave him the exact same advice. You have to deal with it because you're not going to heal from it. And oftentimes we have so many things going on in our lives that have happened to us in the past, and we feel like it's okay to, if our life looks okay, if, we're successful, or we have money, or we buy homes, or we have cars, or, things look okay from the outside, we feel like it's okay to just stuff all that down and don't deal with it. The problem with that is that stuff resurfaces. Our wounds from the past are similar to a wound that we would get on our skin. Okay. If we get some sort of wound, right, it scabs up, right? But if we hit that on something, the scab is going to come off. And then guess what's going to happen? It's going to bleed, right? And it's the same thing with our past, with our hurts, with our pains. It's like a scab, right? It may look all right for a few minutes or for a few days, but there's going to come a day that we're going to hit it on something. The wound's going to come open, and guess what's going to happen? It's going to bleed all over the place. It's the same thing with our lives, right? If there's something that we refuse to deal with, if there's something that we refuse to take head on, we cannot heal from that particular situation, right? It's kind of like a weed. I always go back to this plant thing, right? In all my podcasts almost. It's like a weed, okay? I have weeds in my flower bed that I have to pull all the time, all right? And they continually come back, right? But there's some of those weeds that are really hard to pull up from the roots, right? So those particular weeds continue to grow back because I cannot get the root out. And it's the same thing in our lives. If we do not get to the root of the problem, we are going to continue to bleed. And when we bleed, we're going to bleed all over the place, right? So here's the thing. You have to get to the root cause of your pain and your hurt and whatever it is in your life that is causing that particular pain, right? What is causing that wound to be reopened and bleed everywhere? If you don't get to the root of the issue and you don't deal with the issue, it's going to continue to come back up in your life in different areas. The problem is when it comes back up, when the scab is reopened, when the root is not pulled completely out, we bleed all over the people that we were not meant to bleed all over, right? We pass on those hurts and those pains to our children. We pass on the hurts and the pains to our spouses. We pass on the hurts and the pains to friends, right? Because we have friends that have done us wrong in the past. So any friend that comes along, we're like, oh no, can't be. You cannot be my friend because I do not know what you're going to do to me, right? It's because we have not dealt with the root issue of the problem. And, I'm grateful that I had to go to prison because I got counseling and therapy and all of these things. Like, I believe in therapy. Like, I believe in it 100%. Some people don't. Some people think it's crazy or whatever. But therapy, I believe in it because it works. And in therapy, you are able to get down to the root cause of the issue, right? Your therapists are not there to be your friend. They're there to help you learn to pull the weeds up by the roots, right? They're there to help you heal the scab. But if you refuse to deal with the pain, if you refuse to deal with the addiction or what stems from the addiction, right? I know that when I was in my addiction, I had a lot of hurt and a lot of pains. And that's what I was telling this person yesterday, that in order for someone to heal, they have to get to the root of what's causing them, right? And she was going over some different things with me and was telling me a few things. And I said, that has to get pulled up by the root. Because if that does not get dealt with, the addiction is still going to come. The lack of responsibility is still going to come, right? It's the same thing. If we're an addict, right? And I say I'm an addict, right? I was an addict. And I didn't deal with the root cause of what brought me to that place, right? If I didn't accept my responsibility of why I went to prison, if I didn't accept my responsibility of why I was a bad mom, if I did not accept those things, I could not heal, right? If I did not deal with the root cause, I would have relapsed. And it's the same thing in our lives today. If we refuse to deal with the situation that we have been hurt by or traumatized by, or, has happened in our lives or has continued to happen in our lives, if we do not learn to deal with that situation from the root, we're going to continue to see those bubble up. And they may not bubble up every day, but there's going to be something that comes through, something that triggers, something that sends you in a whirlwind. And guess what? The hurt, the pain, the anguish, the addiction, whatever it is going to bubble up to the surface because the root issue was not dealt with. And I was, asking God, can you please show me something in your word that I can relate to this? Because, I think it's important. I think it's important to also know that healing is not a destination. Healing is a journey. And I had to use my own life situation yesterday when I was talking to her. I said, you want to heal and you see the brighter side of things and you see how things could be. But the problem is that we have to understand that we are not going to wake up one day and say, everything is perfect and I am healed. It is a journey that we have to continue on and continue to be aware of and continue to deal with as things come. I have talked about this in my podcast about having mommy issues, right? And every single time that I have to deal with a situation that comes up, I can immediately go back to, this is what's always happened. Nothing is ever going to change. It's always going to be the exact same. I go back to that and I will rehash these thoughts in my mind with my husband. And then, I say, okay, I'm good. I'm good with it, right? Because I've learned to deal with it, and I have the coping mechanism, and I have the toolbox to know, okay, so when this happens, this is what I need to do, right? I need to speak it, and I need to let it go, right? But it took forgiveness. It took actually bringing to the surface all of the issues the issues, the hurt, the pain, the trauma, the abuse, all of that stuff. I had to deal with that. And sometimes we get into a situation where we feel like, okay, we're ready to deal with these particular hurts and pains. And then when we begin to talk about them, we shut down, right? So here's what we always say: I'm fine. I got this. And in reality, you don't got this. It's the very things that we stuff. It's the very things that we say, oh, I'm fine. Oh, I got this, are the very things that need to be healed. The very things that need to be addressed. So God gave me Psalm 38, chapter 38, starting at verse 3. It says, there is no soundness in my body because of my indignation. There is no health in my bones because of my sin. And I was like, let me look up the definition, right? Because I'm a researcher and I want to break something down. So indignation means that by definition, anger provoked by what is perceived as unfair treatment. Right? Let me read that to you again. There is no soundness in my body because of your indignation. There is no health in my bones because of my sin. How relatable is that? Indignation is the anger provoked by what is perceived as unfair treatment. So when these particular situations come up that have not been dealt with, right, we are provoked, right? So here's the thing. We feel like we've been silenced in our pain, right? We feel like we've lost our voice. We feel like nobody listens to us, right? We feel like we've been rejected or disappointed, or we've lost trust, right? So basically, we have lost the voice to speak our truth and to heal from our issues, right? So there is no soundness in my body because of your indignation. Here's the key word: your, right? So your meaning someone else, right? And our anger is provoked when the scab is broken off and we begin to bleed because we refuse to deal with the hurts and the pains and the traumas and all of the things. The scab comes off, we begin to bleed, and guess what? Anger is provoked. Hurt is provoked. Distrust is provoked. Insecurities are provoked. We shut down. We refuse to deal. And we say, I'm fine. I got this. And we may not say that to someone else, but in our insides, we're saying that. But what's happening is we're stuffing everything. Right? We're stuffing everything. And then it says, for my iniquities have flooded over my head. The definition of iniquity is immoral or grossly unfair behavior. For my iniquities have flooded over my head. Does anybody ever get into their own head? You get into your own head and you say, oh, everybody does this to me. Oh, this is going to happen again. Oh, I've already been through this before and I already know what's going to happen. So your anger is provoked because you've been hurt, right? You feel like you have lost your voice. You have no sound. You don't deal with it. You keep quiet, right? Because you feel like you have been grossly mistreated. And then it says, they have flooded over my head. So when you get into this mentality of hurt and pain and things that are not dealt with, and that you don't want to talk about, or you've seen it happen over and over again, and although you want to make things happen and you want things to be healed. In order for a situation to be healed, you have to heal. Right? And as an example of that in my life is that when I got out of prison, my kids were wild. Right? They had no direction. They had no structure. They had nothing. They were running the streets like little heathens. And, you know, I had to show structure. If I was not healed, if I was not an example, I don't know where my children would be today. Right? If I would not have dealt with the root cause of all of the hurt, the pain, the addiction, the trauma, the abuse, if I would have not, my wounds would have bled all over my children. If I would have not healed and made it my goal in life to be whole and healed, it would have bled all over my husband. So it says, my wounds are foul and festering because of my foolishness. When our scab breaks open and we begin to bleed, we lose control of what we know is right. Because we can't see past the hurt, the pain, the insecurities, the distrust, the trauma, the abuse, and we allow those wounds to fester in other areas of our life. Whether that be in our kids or in our relationships, maybe our relationship with God, or whatever that is, they begin to fester, they get infected, they bleed all over the place because we refuse to deal with the root cause. And I don't know who needs to hear this today because I have no idea where this even came from, but he said, be bold, because I would have continued on vision. But I felt him tell me that you can't get a vision and I can't bring you to another level when you're refusing to deal with the level that you're on. When you're refusing to deal with the past. You don't have to live there anymore. You don't have to live your life looking in the rearview mirror. You have the permission to heal. You have the permission to deal with all of your stuff. And it goes on to say, I am bent over and brought very low all day long. I go around in mourning, for my insides are full of burning pain, and there are no soundness in my body. I am faint and severely crushed. I groan because the anguish of my heart. When we're hurt, our heart is broken. When we're hurt, our mind is flooded with all of the reasons why we cannot heal, why we're not good enough, why we're not capable, why we're not smart enough. Because the pain defines how we live our life every single day. Let me say that again. The pain will define how you operate and live and function in your life every day. If you do not put some Neosporin on that wound and a Band-Aid on it, right? And allow it to heal, or being bold if you don't deal with it. Sometimes we have a fear around dealing with something, right? We have a fear, like I had a fear of speaking my truth. I had a fear of telling my story. I had a fear of judgment, a fear of rejection. I had all of these fears that were inside of me based on my limiting beliefs around what my past was. I didn't feel as if I was qualified because I was broken. I didn't feel like I had a voice because I had been silenced at the age of 10. I didn't feel like I was good enough because I was told that I would never be anything other than a drug addict or a convicted felon. If I would have let those things fester in my mind and in my heart, I would not be sitting here right now. But we have to learn to heal. We are in a world right now that it's like an epidemic of mental illness. Because our world is so chaotic, our social media is full of what our lives should look like. In reality, nobody's life looks like that. Nobody gets on Facebook and says, I just cried myself to sleep all night last night because I'm struggling with depression. Instead, we put on a preset or a filter and we smile and we say, oh, my life is amazing. In reality, your insides are eating away at you. And that's because there's a stigma around being vulnerable. There's a stigma around being real and being whole. There's a stigma around people speaking their truth because somebody else may be uncomfortable. So I encourage you today that I want you to get a vision in your life. I want God to take you to new levels, right? I want Him to show you the beauty, the blessings, the abundance in everything that He has for you. But when we refuse to heal, we oftentimes won't surrender it all to God, right? I'm going to give God this, right? Because it's comfortable. And then I'm going to keep this over here because it's not uncomfortable. And, God may not like that as much, right? So I'm just going to give Him this part of it. We have to give it all to Him. Every single bit of it. Whether it's dirty, ugly, hurtful, painful, it doesn't matter what it is. We have to give it to Him. We have to make a commitment to allow ourselves to heal and be whole. We have to learn to use our voice and to speak the truth for us to heal. It doesn't matter. Somebody told me one time when I was in prison, one of my counselors, she said, let me just be real with you right now. Do you think that the person that abused you and hurt you is losing any sleep right now? Do you think that they're sitting at home thinking about, oh my gosh, how bad I've hurt her or what I've done to her? She said, no, they're not. They're not losing sleep. They're not sitting in prison. They are not in active addiction. They are not doing any of that. You are hurting because you are holding on to the things that they did to you. You got to deal with it and let it go. And I don't know who needs to hear this today. I don't. And I hope it makes sense because God gave it to me and said, just be bold. Just be bold. And I hope that it makes sense. But when I tell you that when I committed to being healed and using my voice and speaking my truth, is when I saw God really begin to move in amazing ways in my life. Because I said, you know what? I've got the tools. I went to counseling. I went to therapy. I've, got a degree in psychology. I've done all of these things. And I'm beginning to heal. I feel whole, right? I don't walk around every day with a 100-pound weight on my shoulders because of what happened to me in the past. Healing is beauty. Healing is meant by God. We were not meant to stay in our limiting beliefs. We were not meant to stay in hurt and anger and pain and insecurities and the fear of rejection and the fear of disappointment and the fear of not being who God has created us to be. We were not meant to stay in that place. We were meant to go through the valley and come out on the mountaintop. We were meant to go through the valley. We were assigned a purpose before we were even born. And God says, I know what you're going to go through in your life, but I've got you. But I need you to know that I got you. I need you to know that you're worthy of healing. I need you to know that you're worthy of the abundance. I need you to know that you're worthy of wholeness and happiness. You're worthy of having the business. You're worthy of being a speaker. You're worthy of having that husband or having that wife. You're worthy of love. You are worthy of all the things that my word says you can have. You're worthy of the promises. But before I can give you the promises that I have for you, you've got to admit that you need healing. You've got to admit that you've got some things going on in that head of yours that you need to get out and you need to heal from. You've got a story that you need to tell. Because somebody is waiting to hear your story. But if you're not willing to deal with it, you're not going to heal from it. Because it starts with digging up the roots. It starts with taking care of the wound so it doesn't bleed all over the place. It starts with committing to yourself and making a promise to yourself that you are going to get on the healing journey so that your life can be better. And like I said, I don't know who needs to hear this today, but I hope that it hits the ears of the person that needs to hear it. I know it's unlike any of the other podcasts that I normally do, but I've just been seeing hurt and pain over the last few weeks. And, and it seems like it keeps coming back up in the same way, but in different people. And God is just saying today that he can help you pull that up from the roots. He is the healer of the wounds. And that he can make you whole. He can help you heal. But you first have to admit that you need to be healed. You have to admit that you have some things going on in your mind or in your heart that is not where God wants you to be or who God wants you to be. And we have to be committed to dealing with that so that we can heal and be whole. I thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that I added some value. I hope that this podcast hits the person that needs to hear it. And I hope that you have an absolutely amazing day. And I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.